working for us. And that should be done. Okay, let me just put that in my notes. Okay. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Today, did I do the YouTube? Does it say the recording's on? Yes, and YouTube Live. Okay, today what I want to do is give you the study guide for the exam, talk about the rest of the first half of the semester before you go on fall break. So today we're going to go over the study guide. I'll answer kind of the overview of our next exam. And since we're going through also security, I thought it would be our honor to invite the director of security for the University of Miami. So you understand that in this case, I thought, Stephen, it would be wonderful to bring that person in and give us an overview, plus the questions even that we've covered about security. You're going to be tested about security, and your own personal issues about security that we can hear from her, straight from her, and I'll give her some time that we can ask questions. So I'll be using that also as class participation. If you ask intelligent, questions on that, you will get class participation credit for that. So we'll start proceeding with it. So let me share my screen. You can see I'm going to go to you see that we're streaming live, and I'm going to Blackboard, and let me take off my editing, and I'll see exactly what you do. We always go to what's due. So I go to what's due. I know today is the September 29th. We had already this past Wednesday the audit assignment for the AI-powered research assistant, and we had information security and the adaptive part as well. And then I had you look at securityitmiami.edu about our information security for the University of Miami. I've invited the director here, and she will be in at this time. We invited her, Daniel, at 4. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a few minutes to discuss. On Monday, October 6th, we have the assignment for a reflection for your AI-powered research assistant, the reflection group, and we have that due on Monday the 6th. This Wednesday, we will not have class, and probably, Daniel, you can put that maybe in the announcements.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to do that today or that day of the class. What do you think, Daniel? When would you like to put that in?
I'll put it in today.
Yeah, put it in today that there's no class you could put a note there, there's no class on Wednesday, October 1st, and then remind them on Monday, October 6th, we'll do you can even put that in the announcement that Monday, October 6th, we'll do an extensive review of the exam, plus their assignment, October 6th is due. And then on Wednesday, October 8th, we'll be in person, we'll have the exam. So at this time, it is the exam review in PowerPoints and documents. So if everybody, you can click in PowerPoints and documents, you can see the exam review. Basically on the exam, it'll be on Wednesday, October 8th. It'll be in person. It will be proctored. I suggest that, here sometimes people are coming in at 3:35, 3:40. We will start exactly on time. At 3:35, everybody will start the exam. So I suggest that you arrive at least 10 minutes. I would even arrive 15 minutes early. The exam will be closed note, closed book, closed AI software, and you must bring with you a pictured ID, your cane card or your government ID, and your laptop. Your laptop, you want it to have Respondus installed, and we'll be using it as a backup. There are computers in the lab, but as we know, Carissa, what? Things don't always happen as we expect. So we always want to, how we've been in the business already so long, Carissa, that if we have to do a professional activity, you want to have backups, right? When you're on the spot, you don't want to be in a situation. So everybody is required to bring their laptops. You may even try this week to install it. If you're having any problems with your laptop, it's there. The format of the exam is going to be 2 parts. One part, you'll be taking one part multiple choice. It will be similar to the quizzes that you've been taking. And the second part is open-ended. There'll be 2 to 3 open-ended questions. I've made a decision that people respond differently in tests. You can decide what order you want to take it. So Carissa, if you want to take the open-ended first and then the multiple choice, you have that choice. Instead, you say, I'll do the multiple choice and then I'll do the open-ended. You can decide. So you're not going to be time per se on each side that you take it. But you need to finish by the end of the class period. Okay? And here is the exam review guide. Next Monday, I will go in detail with you and give a review. What I'm allowing you to do is take this, try to study however you want, and then if you have questions, come up with those questions on Monday. I will be happy to answer any of the questions you have. And even though if you don't have additional questions, then Lauren, what I will do is I'll go into areas that I think you should know. You got it? So you have it in this part on the multiple choice, true, false. We've divided it up in chapters. So you need to know things like data versus information versus knowledge. You need to know what each of these do and examples of what's an example of data, what's an example of information versus knowledge. You see here all the terms. You have TG1, which is the hardware part. We've talked about it before, right, Bobby, in terms of, right, the hardware, the primary storage, secondary storage is RAM. We talked about operating systems. You know what? We'll talk about, you should know the different types of operating systems, right, of Windows, Mac OS, operating systems of Linux, Chrome. And then you can think about chapter 5, where we talk about data governance, and the area of the goals of data, the data hierarchy, primary versus secondary, the idea of database management, data warehouse. And then here are all your types of security issues, which I'll go into. The beauty here is if you're looking at these, we can also, I've added today, since this is such an important chapter, I've asked the Director of Security to give us a lowdown as well on what's important at the university and also for us to be secure. So this is the chapters, and including the types of securities, exposures, threats, vulnerabilities, as we went through it, the different types of social engineering, as well as how can we then mitigate our risk? How can we deal with risk analysis? And of course, we know there's going to be risks, so what type of controls there are. And this is the open-ended questions. So what I have here are open-ended sample open-ended questions that I'm giving you in advance, and I'll choose 2 to 3 of these questions. So if you think about it, Carissa, it's so much information. I like to give you an area in which you need to study. And then once you know this, then it'll reduce your anxiety. Because how can you really study all these? And these are important, from describing the user-led practices to improve digital security, and explain in this case how it's going to help secure, to basically some of our assignments. So in this, you remember we were doing local recordings versus cloud recordings. We were doing YouTube, Zoom's remote features, basically looking at business applications. In question 3, we were talking about cloud-based recorders, screen recorders, and how this is going to influence your decision, which recording systems you should use. Then in terms of database management systems, file management, knowing the difference between a field, a record, a data file, basically thinking about an application of that, where a university student class database, what fields would you use, which ones should be primary key, why is that primary key important? And then we discussed about the whole idea of data governance. You need to know what it is, why is it essential for protecting student and research data at the university. There's a 2-step process for accessing the university systems, and defining what is authentication, what is authorization. You remember we talked about the principle of least privilege. So you remember in this case, Stephen, you remember what we talked about, that least privilege? Do you remember what that was? We talk about it, that every user in a system, we should give them the least privilege. They need to do what? Be able to perform their work. So in my regular class, you have the least privilege. You can't change your grades, right? But in the audit area, what do? I give you the least privilege to be able to do those sections about working with groups, right? So those are areas in that case. Number 6 was explain the differences between threat, exposure, vulnerabilities, talk about risk management, risk analysis, and give 2 examples from a university setting to illustrate those. What would be a threat in a university? What would be exposure? What would be a vulnerability? And then 7, we talked about our assignments right now of AI-powered research assistants, talk about how they can enhance productivity, improve the quality of your work, and positively basically impact your lifestyle. Here, I want you to explain the potential benefits for businesses outside of education. It's like a no-brainer, if I think about it, Kendall, that Notebook LM for studying for exams, right? But could it be used for businesses? How could you possibly use it for business outside educational use? And there, I will also, in terms of your reflections, you may even want to talk about it in your next assignment, right? Is where do you see this type of technology going in the future? What improvements do you foresee? And then there's another flip side that I always want you to think about, is what are the ethical concerns, the risk in using software like this type of process. So discuss what you believe is the single most pressing risk or ethical concern associated with the rise of AI assistance, and explain why it needs our attention. And number 8 was the idea of defining an application programming interface. Remember, we talked about that in our class discussions about using APIs and explain its general purpose, why are they being used, and explain its role in linking apps we use, for instance, in class. Every time we go into Blackboard, basically, is how do you enter the Zoom? You enter Zoom by going into Blackboard. So what does that mean? You're going into Blackboard and you're entering Zoom. That means there's some kind of connection there. How do you get to Wiley Plus? You enter Blackboard, and through Blackboard, we go to Wiley Plus. And in that case, what happens? You go to Wiley Plus, you read the text, then you take a quiz, but your quiz grades go back to where? Where do they reside? Your quiz grades then get, basically, they get copied and sent back to Blackboard's gradebook. At the end of the class, we take attendance. We take attendance with the software called Quickly. Quickly is another software that is not part of Blackboard. So, but where do you take attendance? We take attendance, we start attendance through Blackboard. And then we go to Quickly, that gives us, in this case, it gives us a code. And that code then comes back to a Quickly records it. And then your grade gets put back into Blackboard under your grade book. So there's a connection there. And why do then companies then do it? Also Zoom. What happens in Zoom is Zoom, we can record live to what? YouTube channel. We have to create a YouTube channel in through Google. But we can remain in Zoom and then have that connection between Zoom and YouTube. It goes on many different features, but since we use that, I want you to think about that. Okay, so these are areas. So what I suggest you do is go ahead and you can study any way you like. You can use some of those, as I told you, everybody used another chapter, right, that you used it. You can even, what other type of chatbots that you can use, I don't care. But what the key here is it's going to be closed notes for the exam, but you'll prepare. My suggestion is prepare for next Monday. I will do extensive review for next Monday as we proceed. Questions? They'll be divided in two. It will be machine graded, your multiple choice, and I will grade your open-ended. You'll have two grades. You'll combine those two grades together for the open-ended versus the multiple choice. Any comments? Daniel, do you want to give any comments on that, on the exams?
Yeah. Well, obviously there's the multiple choice and then there's the short answer part, and they count equally. So spend a lot of time on that short answer part. Again, 2, 3 questions might be on the exam. So that's a lot of points per question. So spend a lot of time reviewing that. And then the multiple choice, it will be fairly similar in format to the quizzes and to the adaptive assignments. So you can use the Wiley resources to prepare.
Okay. On the open-ended questions, what I will tell you is you need to answer all parts of it. So if I am, let me just share this for a second. If I look at these last questions, for instance, you need to, for instance, make sure that when you're defining, you define all of these, and also for the explanations. I don't want a lot of wording, just fillers, but you need to show that you understand the concepts. So it's the same thing here when I talk about data governance, give a definition of data governance and explain it. And also that two-step process, you can do A, B, C. You can set that it's easy for one to follow, of that two-step process of accessing the university system. And also, in this case, give examples. When you provide two examples, show exactly how that would be, especially in a university environment, and also the same thing of the state of what would be the negative consequences if this rule was not followed of least privilege. And it's the same thing in this one. Make sure that you answer all parts. If you don't answer all parts, you get partial credit. And in this place, you should be doing well on, I think, on the open-ended, because you basically have the questions in advance. That is coming to it. And it's the same thing with some of these questions in terms of data versus information versus knowledge, of being able to know not only the definitions, but examples. So in all of these, for instance, on transaction processing systems, is think about all of these as examples. So transaction processing, a transaction would be basically you're in line in CVS, and then you can scan your own product that basically is a transaction. And that transaction processing system is a way in which they're basically doing that either in batch or on the cloud.
Professor Corinna just joined.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay.
We should do the live stream thing.
Yeah. So let me just stop here.
Welcome, Corinna.